Attention, please. The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Invest in Yourself, the podcast series. I am, of course, the host with the most feel better, Podcast Mogul. I'm here with John and Owen from the Pros versus Bro podcast. I probably fucked it up. Did I mess it up?
Pros versus bros?
Bro versus bros. Verse.
It's
Okay.
It's like the sixth time.
I know. It's going to be.
God
I'm never going to
damn,
pronounce your
man.
names. I'm going to call it the PVB podcast from now on.
That's fine. That's actually
yeah.
kind of one of our goals is PVB is just kind of be the shortened version of it.
Then why did you name it that?
It's in the profile picture. It's implied.
That's
It's
true.
short.
It implied. Yeah, no, nothing's
Yeah.
ever implied. Don't you know we're men? We don't know these things. John and Owen, thank you so much for being guests on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
I'm interested to know, one, how you came up with the name and why you guys started your podcast. So we're going to start with the name. Who wants to take that question?
Owen was kind of the one that kicked off the podcast in general. So I'll let him do the origin story and I'll do the name. So the name was just, why do you name a writing podcast? Because that's ultimately what it is. And there's all kinds of puns you can do, but you Google writing podcast, you're going to come up with a list as long as your arm of everyone that's ever named a podcast, something about writing. So prose and verse are both words for writing. You write in prose or you write verse. So prose/verse, and we're two bros. The E at the end of bros is just to keep consistency, though my wife has raked me over the coals of putting that E at the end of bros, and she said that was a terrible decision. So
I think it's funny. I think it's fine. It works.
but yeah,
It works.
pros versus bros, the idea being is that we're just focused on it's writing in general. It's kind of an in joke in a way.
It's for writers, you're saying.
Yeah.
It's an in-joke for writers. Okay. So, because I was looking at it, I'm like, I have no idea what this means. Like, are they just adding, like, it's a like, I thought it was like verses at one point. I'm like,
It is kind of verses in a way because in every episode we do have a poll asking people which story they liked best. So like in a way, there is kind of a competitive edge there, but we're not in it just to punch each other up.
Owen's over here thinking, maybe I am.
I'm gonna kill
Maybe
you.
I am. All right,
It's
Owen.
all been my goal.
the one day punch John. So Owen, tell me, where did you come up with the idea of the podcast and why did you come up with the idea?
Well, John and I talked a lot about writing stuff because he is much farther along in his respective work than I am, but I talked to him a lot about this big project that I've had for several years that I've been concepting, and him and I just kind of work very well creatively, and we just bounce off of each other really well. And he has podcast knowledge, and I've been told by several people that I have a very interesting voice for like a podcast. So I thought, hey, why don't we do that and have it for writing? Because a lot of people do things like film podcasts or just people talking, and half of what we do is just the dudes talking kind of thing. But there's also that writing theme to it, which is not really covered a whole lot.
At least not in the way that we do it, I think.
No.
Yeah.
I was listening to a Hotel of Only 13 Floors.
Nice.
That's
That's one
the
of my
intro
favorite
was
so far.
very interesting.
Thank you. That was a kind of a creative, chaotic process that we just harnessed one day.
Yeah.
And that intro happened. The idea being is it really pitches what you're getting into at the beginning.
Just chaos.
Yes.
Well,
Focused chaos is what I like to call it.
it's certainly something chaotic. So you're both writers, I take it.
Yeah. At least by desired profession.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so as Owen alluded to, John, you have previous experience podcasting.
Yeah. So it was at this point, it would have been a little over a year ago. I did a show for
I
a
must
couple
have thrown
years.
you under the bus on this one. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. The show is no longer in operation, but it was a film-based show where we mostly talked about streaming videos. We were actually one of the few podcasts at the outset that focused solely on streaming content.
Okay.
Now it's a dime a dozen, even Honest Trailers has honest streaming trailers now. But like, at the beginning, it was just about narrowing down the streaming content that's out there to what we recommend you watch, what we recommend you avoid for shows and movies. And the idea was to make you instead of just browsing for hours and hours, you know what to watch. But it just didn't really go anywhere. So, and his life has picked up, man. It was my cousin it was with. He's now expecting a child. So,
yeah, that will take away some of your time to podcast.
Yeah, life has changed in some ways for quite the better, and so now here I am. So I'm glad the experience paid off in this way.
There you go. And Owen, with your interesting voice, how do you find this? So this is your first podcast. Have you guested on other podcasts, or like this is your exclusive? Like you only live on the pros verse your PVB podcast?
I think it's the only podcast I've ever done. So like I've done other things for entertainment. Like I've acted in short films and stuff, and I do like theater and whatnot. But in terms of podcast stuff, this is the first thing I've ever done.
And why did you guys choose writing? Like out of all the niches that are out there, like what, apart from it being like your want to be chosen professions, was there something like deeper that you wanted to focus on in the writing on podcasts?
I think it's. I have an answer, but I don't know how to word it.
As a writer, that could be a problem.
Yes, but there's a lot of stuff like where there's shows where people draw things, and there's this timeline of them just drawing this goofy whatever stuff, or just shows of people just making and showing that off to this group of people that like that kind of thing. And there isn't that kind of stuff for writing, at least from what I've seen, because we could have easily just done a show where it's us talking about, media, like books and media that you read that we enjoy. But I've never seen a show where we make this short story and then we show it to people and just have fun with it, see how people enjoy it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's to kind of, since writing is not a very visual medium, as he mentioned, you got Doodle Dudes, you got Drawfee on YouTube and such, these shows that just show the drawing process, and it's very visual. Writing doesn't have that. So yeah, this is a way to get out stories that no one else will literally have ever heard before, because they didn't exist before this show. And that will go for both us and eventually other people, and to show off maybe voices that haven't been heard before in terms of the written word. And so that's kind of a fun idea of it too.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Being able to give the voice to some of the voiceless out there, and showing different styles. Do you guys change up your style of writing in each episode? Since I've unfortunately only listened to one of your episodes, I'm going to go listen to some back catalog of yours. But is it a different style at each time you write your short stories, or is it the kind of thing?
I think the prompts definitely force a change in style and genre. So I've written a few things in like a first person perspective. I've written things in a third person perspective. We did an episode where we made an SCP, if you know what that is, and that's a very specific like way of writing that I had to pick up and learn before doing that.
I was a little more hard-headed and wrote it like a normal short story. But the idea is, an SCP is, kind of like more of a document file, very much matter of fact, very business. This is this thing, but I wrote it as a short story. But yeah, I mean, my style, I've kept mostly through the episodes, but I don't usually write mystery, which I've done now. I don't usually write horror, which I've done now. Like there are certain genres that I avoid in my personal life that it's forcing me to go into, which is what prompts are for. Because the other part of the show that we haven't necessarily mentioned is that every single week, Owen and I are operating off of a singular shared prompt. So we're both, as you said, it's the 13th floor. So the episode you listened to, we have it's the concept of this hotel that was built exclusively out of only the 13th floors of other hotels.
Oh.
And that was the prompt. And so Owen and I will go off and what is it that we write? We don't know. And we both bring our unique stories based off that prompt to each episode. So it shows that, from one source, two minds can make something wildly different or maybe very much the same. You never know what you're going to get.
And to get your prompts, do you engage with your audience to get those prompts, or do you just decide to pick randomly out of a hat?
It depends. So audience engagement, yeah, we would love to pick prompts from people in comments and all that kind of stuff. And then if there's happens to be a low level of that, yeah, we'll Google it or we'll make up one. We do have a rolling list, private list of prompts that we keep all the time.
That's cool. So cool.
It has audience participation literally built into it. It's just unfortunate that nobody has taken that opportunity to give us anything quite yet, which it'll happen eventually.
Of course.
It's just kind of funny that it has not happened yet.
It all depends on, you have to get that audience production interaction, find where your audience is and make sure your audience can connect.
Yeah.
Have you had contact with audience members? Like, have you had feedback from your audience that's been listening to your show?
Oh yeah, we've had a variation of family, friends, and even some complete strangers who have voiced up that they like the show and it's going well. So far, no one has said there's anything incredibly egregious about it, so I haven't had to correct quite anything yet. Though the editing process is ever self-improving. But yeah, I mean, it's been positive so far, so we're optimistic. And yeah,
there was a person who has their own podcast who replied to one of the episodes that John put on Twitter, saying that one of the characters, I think in one of my stories, that episode had the same birthday as him, and he sent that to me. I was like, "That is amazing! I love that."
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that is awesome. Getting those little those are better tweets than someone saying, "Oh, I love your show." Like, it's like you've actually connected with that audience member.
There's like a relation.
She listened to the episode. It wasn't just some comment that popped up out of nowhere, which I appreciate anyone who says I love your show, of course. But like,
of course.
It does show in an organic way. Like, I listened to the episode and I actually enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it. Someone got me to comment, and that's the thing that I really appreciate, because a lot of people listen to something and not comment. In fact, the majority. So if I got you to the point that you felt like commenting, that means I'm doing something right, and I that's a good feeling.
I love it. No, it's very true that connection to your audience when they reference something specific in your episode. It just brings it's a little goal, like your heart just grows 2 inches bigger. Like the Grinch.
Yeah, no, it just made my heart happy for that day. I was like, that's just great. That's
the rest of your day could go wrong, but you get that one thing, like, I have the same birthday as a character, and you're like, the world's gone to shit. I'm okay though.
I'm okay for today. I got this.
How did you find, I want to ask Owen this, since John, you've already popped your cherry with your film podcast and gotten over the nerves. How did you deal with the nerves of being on the podcast and knowing that someone would be listening to your art that you're putting out?
Oh, this is me.
Sorry, John's an old hat, so it's you, Owen, that I'm
cool.
this question at.
I don't know. It's just, I don't really mind it, honestly. I'm like, they're gonna hear it. Sure.
So you had no fears, like sharing your art, sharing your stories, or how long does it take you? Okay, yeah. So I have like 80 questions that I want to throw out at the same time. So I'm gonna come back. So you had no fear when you started this podcast, knowing that people would be hearing your short stories or hearing the stories that you're putting out there?
I think there was a level of me being nervous, but I feel like if I have some little bit of confidence in the thing that I am willingly reading and putting out to the world, I really don't mind that much, because I'm like, if I think it's okay, if I think it's fine, and just somebody comments, "Man, that story sucked," I'm not really gonna give a shit because I liked it. It's not gonna cater to everybody.
That's good.
All right. And you're writers, you've published works. What do you normally work on? Yeah, we'll start with John and then we'll jump over to Owen. And I want to hear, Owen, a bit about this massive project that you're working on. I'm interested to hear more about that. But John, what kind of, your creative process, writing? Do you write articles? Do you write actual long-winded stories that you publish? Like, how do you go about doing your writing?
Right now, writing has narrowed in on just novelization and screenwriting. I used to have a blog a long time ago that I just put short stories out on. I've had other works. I've written shorts that got made into films that got put out there. And so that's been all great. But right now it's mainly just books and screenwriting. And the main reason that Owen and I kind of bonded in terms of creatives is because we both realized we're certifiably insane. And we have these secondary fantasy worlds because we're both operating primarily in the fantasy genre that are just massive scale. Like I think the very first word I ever wrote in the world that I currently have was when I was 17, a decade ago. And it's been going since. And I'm not done, and neither is Owen. And then so we just kind of bounce back and forth, almost kind of one-upping each other sometimes in an unspoken way with how insane we are with a certain plot point, or I added a whole new book to my roadmap just because, that sort of thing. And that just kind of tumbled into the chaos that you see today.
And Owen, what is this massive project that you said you've been working on? If you can reveal it to us.
I can't be too specific because it's still in concepting. It's very, very late in concepting still, but either way, I still haven't written it. But it is what I have deemed like this anthology series turned saga called Chronos.
Okay.
So it
got a really cool magic system.
Yeah.
I can't speak to the details of it but I've heard them. Humble brag.
I know something you don't know.
I know it's very. My magic system sucks in comparison. Like I think he has a very cool magic system. It's a unique thing that has not been in another fantasy series before. I can say that with absolute confidence. There are like things in media at large, but originality is dead. But in terms of the fantasy genre, there's nothing out there quite like it. So that's one of the things that also drew me to it.
And besides just that power system, I also have other things that characters can do to like not just have that one thing. So people are like, "Okay, I get it.
That's their thing. Thank you very much."
Yeah.
Next type.
There's way more things that other people can do, and there's even powers that a certain group of characters can exclusively have. Just so there's more things to look at, I guess, because like John said, I'm insane and I like giving myself more work and things to think about. But essentially, it would start as 4 stories that you would think are separate that kind of loosely correlate, and then the saga portion of it is these already pre-established characters like come together and they learn about each other and they just become more powerful. Really, just something like that.
So you would have the first kind of I'll liken it to something that I can. It's so similar to how the Marvel movies have their one-off stories that kind of don't connect at all, and then they have the Avengers team up. That kind of would be going on.
Yeah, that's a pretty good comparison, honestly.
Look at me, I'm smart.
but every single part of the saga is like Infinity War Endgame levels of batshit insane.
Holy shit.
It's like galactic and time spanning is basically what we're talking about. So like there's all kinds of different time space continuums talking about different locations and galactic scale.
To make it very, very loose, the 4 major villains, one is a kid who messes up time multiple times. The 2 villains after that are the consequences of those kids' actions. And the 4th villain is the being ultimately responsible. That's all I will say.
So I'm going to liken it to maybe Asimov's Foundation series. How that spans multiple generations and time. Is it kind of going in that vein, or is it like literally the kid just jumps from different points and because he's done that? Never mind. I don't want to ask because I don't want to ruin it.
Nah.
You're gonna take the
Sip.
fifth on that. You're gonna take the fifth, and I'm okay with that.
It's the curse of
Oh
being a writer is
no,
you don't
I
want
lost
to
the
show your hand like a
key.
magician.
Yeah, you don't want to give anybody ideas.
Yeah.
Oh God, I want to know more because I love science, like fantasy science fiction.
Oh, I really
Book.
should just start writing it. Like I've said to John a million, billion, squillion times over. Like I really should just start
Yeah,
writing this because I have so much in my brain that I just got to get out.
I bet you have token level books of stuff regarding the whole systems and that you're working on.
Probably. I have a Google Doc somewhere just on my computer and on my phone with a list of just all of these different things that cater to this one major power system that I have. It's very in depth.
That's great. And John, are you working on anything as in depth as his, apart
Oh,
from
yes.
your?
Yeah. The series I have right now, I believe, is sitting at 13 outlined novels. And I think I have about 20 shorts as well planned. So that's the fantasy series. And then I have a sci-fi novel in the works. I also have now a horror novella in the works. So I like to give myself work too. But right now I have a fantasy novel in beta read that I'm working on that I'm hoping to actually bring to market at some point to try and actually get published within the year. Not published within the year, but start querying and asking people, please, sir, will you represent within the year to get to get an agent or something like that.
I'm gonna bring it back to the podcast, but I'm very interested. Like, I would love to be able to be a part because I love reading. I don't have enough books to read. But going back to the podcast with the stories that you're developing each week, these short stories, have you thought about maybe compiling them into a book and
Yep.
selling those books, or is
I
the
think-
plan?
It has been a thought.
Yeah, I think that was eventually a thing that we would do of like stories that people really, really liked. And we'd have to just pick and choose because there'd probably be a good bit of them. But like really
Create collections of some
refining-
sort.
Yeah, really refining the ones that people like and then putting that into a book for just people to have at their house and
That would be
pick up
cool.
whenever they want. That would be
That's
pretty
been
sick.
thought of. There's other ideas on the table too in terms of actual preservation of the stories, where they could be found, maybe read. This also extends to eventually we're going to have other people involved. I have other writing friends who want to be on the show, and a format for that's being worked out. But they'll also bring written stories as well. So we want to find places for those to go. So it's kind of an evolving process of where those things are going to go. Maybe even a blog. We don't know yet.
And how long have you guys been running this show?
It launched in January. We conceived of it in terms of its name probably about 2 months before that. So November is when we really started putting it into play, and then I launched it in January with our pre-recorded content.
And going to the pre-recorded, because I was going to ask about that, like how long in advance do you guys record your episodes to get it? Because I'm assuming the writing, your day jobs or school and all that does take some time away from the podcasting. Like, how do you record like a whole bunch in like one day, or is it over multiple days?
We should be a lot better about it. Right now, we're basically recording for launch. We started out good. We started out with like 3 or 4 episodes in the bank, and the plan moving forward was to record multiple episodes. And yeah, the plan is to record like maybe 2 or 3 in a setting. But the issue is, aside from what other podcasts are able to do, like my past podcast, we're generating content prior to the podcast as well as the podcast itself. So we have to write the stories before we can even record, which means we'd have to write the 3 stories in advance as well as record it in advance, so it's just another step. And so it just kind of bogs down the works, as you said, with the day job and all that stuff. But yeah, ideally we will have we'll catch up again and we'll start recording in advance. Probably I would like a couple weeks in advance. at some point.
No, that does make sense because doing the day of, I used to do that for one of my shows, and it was like just hell on earth, trying to get it out the day of. And now with the having so much in the can, life can mess up, but I don't have to worry about it because it's still the consistency is there.
Yeah.
What are some future plans since this podcast is still in its infancy, if you will? It's only a few months old. Do you have goals for like your 1 year, like hitting that 1 year goal or hitting those 100 episodes or 50 episodes, if you will?
Oh yes.
Should we?
I mean, definitely have the number goals of hitting the 50 and the 100. But the 1 year, we have ideas for like each year we'll probably update parts of the show, like maybe the intro, that kind of thing. So that, there'll be seasons. Every year will be a new rollover of the show. In terms of goals, right now, it's just finding that community, as you said, find that audience, connect with people, really make that community. In terms of personal goals for the show, I'm always looking for ways to improve both the creative process and the process of once it's posted. But it's all ever changing.
Should I, John? Should I bring up the artist thing because that's probably the newest little development in terms of the show.
Sure. I mean, those will probably be done in a few days.
Pretty
Sure.
soon, but
It's probably going to be done before this episode airs. So we're
nice.
Like even before this comes out, probably we are waiting for the finished product of two little characters of John and I for the podcast, because the thing about a lot of the things that I watch primarily, and some of the things that John will listen to, is that the people have these characters. So stuff like the Super Mega Cast, or like John likes Game Grumps, I like Oni Plays. People really like that, and just the idea of just listening to those little characters talking instead of the it's just two dudes sitting in a chair talking to each other.
Yeah.
And people will make art of that or just animate it or whatever comes out of it, but people really like just little caricatures and doodles of people.
Plus, it's fun to see what you look like through someone else's eyes.
Yeah.
So the artwork that we have coming is going to be fun, and ideally we get to make it into like stickers and stuff, because I want a sticker of myself.
Oh yeah.
Put on.
I'm sorry, who wouldn't want a sticker of themselves?
Yeah.
And not just a regular sticker of you. This is someone's interpretation of you just from hearing your voice.
So yeah, I need it. But we're excited about it because I've always wanted to have a little character myself on my show to load that people think of, because there's like, it could be as bizarre as you could think of. There's a show called the Weekly Planets podcast.
Oh, I love it.
Love them. Mr. Sunday, a goat head and a Han Solo vest.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's an origin story behind it, but like, it's such a bizarre character, but people think of that goat head when they hear him speaking. Yeah. So it works. It's funny and charming. So like, I'm like, I think I need a character.
You definitely do. And since you guys are both wild characters of yourself, writers, and you call yourselves psychotic and crazy as well, just because you have these massive ideas, and I'm looking forward to being following you guys. I'm going to jump off screen. I'm going to let you guys have the screen for a short bit. I want you to tell my audience where they can find you, how they can follow you, and how they can help you support your show. So the floor, as I remove myself, is yours.
All right. So honestly, right now, the best way to support us is to follow us where you listen to podcasts. So if you're on iTunes or Spotify or Anchor, that's where we're hosted. That's a way to listen to us. My Twitter account @the_LA_gold. There I post every episode. You'll get all the links. You get even like little clips of funny stuff. There's also a Pros vs. Bros Instagram, spelled the exact same way as the show is. You can follow us there as well. That'll be appreciated. You'll get exclusive content there, as well as little tidbits from the episodes. And for now, just, let us know you're out there. We'd love to hear from you.
Oh, yeah. My Twitter is @Shmemulok. I don't do too much. I just kind of retweet what the post that John makes about the show and just post my own random garbage. So if you think I'm funny, then you might like my Twitter, but
This puts me up there. Yes. So make sure you guys follow my audience. I'm talking to my audience right now. Make sure you follow. The links will be in the show notes down below to support both John and Owen and the PVB podcast, because I'm never going to try and pronounce it again.
Totally fine. PVB works. In fact, Owen was psyched that it looks like a beer brand when you put it as PVB.
It does. I'm looking at your logo
little.
right now, and it's so artistic. I'm very jealous of how fancy your cover art
It's
looks.
it's very like BioShock art.
Yes.
Right? Like the things from BioShock Infinite. It's immediately what I think of.
It's very elegant.
Yes.
And like you feel better looking at it. You're like, oh, this looks like a very interesting. It catches the eye, and that's what I really like it. And guys, I want to thank you for being amazing guests, sharing your stories, giving us a little behind the scenes, Owen, of your epic saga that you're planning on writing, that I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing within the next decade.
Yes, hopefully. I'll probably be dead by then if it doesn't.
You're gonna pull George R. Martin, aren't you? You're gonna just pull him.
I won't let him pull a George R. R.
me
Martin.
alive.
No, I will not let him pull a George R. R. Martin. I despise the fact that there's a George R. R. Martin in that fashion. I will not allow that.
Excellent. Guys, again, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to listening to more of your episodes and hearing your stories and seeing your styles evolve in your podcasting and that. So I thank you again for being on the show. And like most of my guests have,
yeah.
you're very
Honestly,
this was
great. It's been great.
Everybody, remember to invest in yourself and just do it. Just start, because there's no better time.
Do it.